the Manipura, also known as the City of Jewels. It is the third primary chakra, and so now we have a connection to the navel chakra and the ancient Egyptian number key, also revealed within the Hindu tradition. The number 3 is also represented in the triangle within the symbol relating to this chakra, and it is said that the three-eyed god Rudra resides in the Bindu within this chakra. The Manipura is located in the area of the solar plexus, navel, and digestive system. This is known as the fiery third chakra and the resplendent gem. This is also where Taoists say our chi power emanates from. The fire region is represented by the god Vani, who is shining red, has 4 arms, holds a rosary and a spear. The seed mantra for this chakra is the syllable Ram. With both Rudra and Vani, we see a connection to the number 4 Emperor card, which, as we have seen in previous videos, features the symbolism of the ram's head and is symbolic for the physical attributes of the divine male twin soul. Rudra's consort or Shakti is Lakini, who has 3 faces, each with 3 eyes. One of her 4 arms holds a thunderbolt. It is said the arrow shot from the bow is of karma or fate. We not only see a connection to the number 3 in Lakini, but also to the number 9, as the 3 faces each have 3 eyes. When we added the sum of all the previous numbers in the Fibonacci sequence, we got the number 54. But now, if we deduce 5 and 4, we have the number 9. The number 9 is representing the Divine Trinity, but as this is a number deduced from another, it is still only a potential and not yet symbolic of the divine union. It is also not just the connection to the number 9 and the navel chakra that we see with Lakini and the ancient Egyptian number key, but also this is shown to us encoded in the Kabbalah tree of life. If we look to the Kabbalah tree of life, we see a direct connection to the number 9 Seraphot, Yod, and the moon. However, when we look to the path of mouth, which equates to the navel chakra, we see that it is the path number 27. 2 and 7 are 9. And on the strength card, the mouth is also symbolically represented with the lion's mouth being gently closed. Number 9 and the moon can also be seen directly connected in the tarot, for the moon card is number 18, and 1 and 8 are 9. The moon card represents the ethereal plane and the hidden forces of the universe that work within this plane and that effect that they have on us. We can see the ether represented in the water, and the crayfish carries the same symbolic meaning as the crab. And when we look at the sign of Cancer, which is related to the crab, we can see it is ruled by the moon. The crab and crayfish are symbolic for the cycles that are connected to the moon and how they relate emotionally within our instinctive nature. This is symbolized by the dogs representing the male and female twin souls and the primal and instinctive emotions that influence them. The 2 towers again represent the different planes between the physical and ethereal, and we see the physical represented in the number of gold leaves, as 15 when deduced equates to 6. Behind the crescent moon we see the sun is represented, and this is why the navel chakra is also called the solar plexus, due to the connection between the heart chakra and sun and the navel chakra and the moon. This connection between these 2 energy points can be seen on the ancient Egyptian number key as well as the Kabbalah tree of life through the path of Semke, which is path number 25 and deduces to a 7. The root meaning of the word Semke means to uphold or support, and it is the 15th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which is deduced to a 6. So we can see both the physical and ethereal being represented in this path. On the Kabbalah tree of life, the path of mouth is called the path of Pei, and this path is directly related to the navel chakra. Pei is the 17th Hebrew letter in the Hebrew alphabet. Pe is also symbolic of the expression of the soul when it is represented as the tetrahedron. So now we have a connection to the number 8 strength card and the navel chakra on the tree of life in the path of Pe, as 1 and 7 are 8. Pe also has the numerical value of 80. The path of Pe also connects the Sephirot, Hod and Netzach, related to the male and female twin souls within the tetrahedron. And if we multiply the numbers of these Sephirot 7 and 8, we get 56, which deduces to an 11. So now we have another connection to the number 11 and the Justice card connected to the navel chakra. As we saw in the previous videos, the tetrahedron is symbolic for the Trinity and also the ethereal soul. So we are seeing the creation of the soul also represented in this connection between the two Sephiroth through Pe. The number 9 is also found when we multiply the two Sephiroth representing the male and female twin souls and the middle Sephiroth, Yod, representing God. 7 multiplied by 9 equals 63, and 6 and 3 are 9. 8 multiplied by 9 is 72, and 7 and 2 are 9. Many may wonder why such an ordinary card with little symbolism such as the Hermit card can be attributed to such an important and divine number as 9. However, that lack of symbolism and simplicity is in itself symbolic of what this card is revealing. For the Hermit card is showing that the attainment of the Divine Trinity is an inner and individual journey. The soul is now at the bottom gate, ready to make the ascent back to the top, to be returned to perfect wholeness and be crowned with Christ consciousness. However, this journey of each soul must come through walking the inner path and moving beyond each gate by conquering the shadows that keep us bound to the material plane. A soul conquers these shadows of his dark, unconscious nature by having an understanding of himself. And this is done through knowledge seeking and wisdom. Ecclesiastes 7:12. For wisdom is a defense, and money is a defense. But the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom giveth life to them that have it. Proverbs 4:7. Wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding. The lantern he holds in front of him illuminates his path, and it is symbolic also for the illumination within his own heart. For we see that within the lantern there is a 6-pointed star representing the hexagram. And as we have seen in the previous videos, the hexagram is symbolic for the upper and lower forces meeting at the ethereal heart. We can see the star also aligns with the hermit's heart, and his hand is held above, aligned with the third eye. For as we now know, the truth of ourselves will be revealed to us through the heart and mind working in harmony. So now let us see where the Hermit card is connected on the golden mean section. And we see that this is at the number 34. As previously mentioned, this equates to both the sacrum and root chakra on the ancient Egyptian number key. And when we deduce 34, we get 7. So now we have a symbolic connection to the 7 gates that the hermit must traverse to be crowned at the 7th gate as the Divine Trinity. These gates are also known as the 7 heavens, and this is found in many major traditions and mythologies, such as Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, and Christianity, as well as in Hermeticism and Gnosticism. And in Abrahamic religions, the throne of God is said to be above the 7th heaven, and this again equates with the crown chakra and Kether on the Kabbalah tree of life. In the Quran it states, "See you not how Allah has created the 7 heavens, one above the other, and made the moon a light in their midst, and made the sun a lamp?" This verse is relating to the 7 inner gates to God, and also symbolically represents the male and female twin souls in the sun and the moon. The Hindu tradition also has the concept of 7 heavens, and the 7th heaven is known as Brahmapura, and it is said to be the abode of the god Brahma. The 7 gates are not just representing the ascent back to the divine within us, but also the 7 primary energetic points of the ethereal body. Luke 13:24. Strive to enter in at the strait gate, for many, I say unto you, will seek to enter in, and shall not be able. However, let us look again at the number 34. It is obvious our ancient ancestors knew the importance of this number, and 34 had a significant role in their astronomical calculations. In the prehistoric temples of Chaco Canyon in New Mexico, one of the most famous of these temples is the Casa Rinconada. This temple is circular and has 34 masonry vaults corresponding to an astronomical cycle of 34 days. There are also some very interesting quotes in regards to this number from some notable representatives within the religious establishments. In a vision, Brother Joseph Francis tells that one day he saw the crowning of the thorn of our Lord during his passion. By 3 times one had removed and replanted the crown, and each time thorns penetrated in his head, leaving 34 deep wounds. Another is from the priest Padre Pio, who said about himself, I am a priest who prays. One day he answered to his superior, who asked him how many rosaries he had recited each day. Bah! To my superior, I have to tell the truth. I recited 34 of it. And Dante, who many considered as being a great initiate, devoted 33 songs of his divine comedy to the purgatory, 33 to the sky, and 34 to hell. What Dante relayed here is very significant, as we now understand that 33 is related to the crown chakra at the top gate, and 34 to the root chakra at the bottom gate. And Dante had strong connections within the religious institutions, especially Pope Boniface. So therefore it is not hard to imagine he had access to secret knowledge. However, there are yet other numbers encoded within the number 9 Hermit card. For if we look at the Fibonacci sequence once again and add the sum of all the previous numbers to this point, we get the number 88. 88 is a very important number symbolically, for this is relating to the male and female twin souls. Each 8 is symbolic of the immortal soul, that is to make the ascent through the 7 gates back to God and the divinity within themselves. And when we deduce 88, we get 16, and 1 and 6 are 7. So again we see the ethereal body and 7 gates encoded within this number. In Mandarin, 88 translates to Ba Ba, and it is also interesting to note that the ancient Egyptians called the soul Ba Tu. 88 is also the time it takes Mercury to orbit the Sun, and we see the connection to Mercury and Hod in the tetrahedron representing the soul on the bottom of the Kabbalah tree of life. We see the numbers 7 and 8 also being interrelated symbolically in number 17, the star tarot card. This card equates to an 8. However, when we look at the stars depicted on this card, there are 7 8-pointed white stars. And if we include the yellow 8-pointed star in the middle, symbolic of the divine, we now have 8 stars with 8 points. And so we also have the number 88 symbolically represented within this card. On the Kabbalah tree of life, the number 9 Hermit card is equated to Malkuth. However, both the root and sacrum energy points are the energetic forces relating to the earthly connection of our ethereal body. In the previous videos, we have already seen the attributes within Malkuth that relate to the tetrahedron representing the Trinity within each soul. Now we will look into the other foundational attributes of Malkuth in relation to the ascent back up the 7 gates to Kether. For one must understand that the Kabbalah tree of life encompasses many different levels of information, all relating to the soul, not only in the physical and ethereal, but also the soul's creation and ascent back to be reunited with the divine. The Sephirot Malkuth sits at the bottom of the tree at the first gate and is connected to the root chakra. In Hermetic and Christian Kabbalah, Malkuth is known as kingdom and is associated with the realm of matter and earth relating to the physical world we exist within. This is the kingdom that emanates from the divine source to be manifest in the material, but is also reflected back up to the source in an infinite cause and effect relationship. As above, so below is reflected into the infinity. This is also shown in the number 10, the number of Malkuth, as 10 is an infinite number when divided by the Trinity. The Kabbalah tree of life is not only representing the soul at the bottom in the tetrahedron, but also the ascent of the soul back through the 7 gates, also depicted on the tree of life at the 7 chakra points. If we add the sum of all the Sephiroth and paths representing the chakra points, when we get to the third eye chakra, this equates to 85. And if you add 3 for the Trinity, you get 88. Malkuth is also associated with the world of Asaya, the material plane, and the lowest of the 4 worlds of Kabbalah. These 4 worlds are speaking of the 4 elements of earth also represented in Malkuth: wind, fire, water, and earth. We also see the number 4 is related to the root chakra and foundation, as we have seen in the number 4 Emperor card. The tarot card number 19, the Sun, which is symbolic for the material and purifying of the soul, is also showing this connection to Malkuth, as both 10 and 19 are deduced to a 1. This shows that Malkuth and the Sun are a direct emanation of the One, which represents Ketha or God. On the ancient Egyptian number key, the root chakra is located just above the ankle. Unfortunately, there has been an agenda to keep hidden the correct positioning of this energy point, as without the correct placement of this chakra in energy work, one's true energetic power remains elusive. In the Hindu tradition, the root chakra is shown at the ankle in many ancient diagrams. However, they are continually misinterpreted and place the root at the bottom of the spine. However, in this Chinese diagram, it is clearly showing that the energetic flow moves past the spine down the leg. This new information may not be welcome by many practitioners who have studied energy work and incorrectly use the bottom of the spine as the location of the root chakra. However, the proof can also be found when putting the correct position of the root chakra into practice. In the Hindu tradition, the root chakra is called the Muladhara and is symbolized by a lotus with 4 petals. So we see the number 4, symbolic for foundation, is represented in the symbolism related to this chakra. The god associated with this region is Indra, who is yellow in colour with 4 arms and is mounted upon the white elephant Adavata, who has 7 trunks. In the Rig Veda, Indra is king of gods and a symbol of courage and strength. He is also the god of thunder and rain, and he is the leader of the 33 ethereal Deva gods. Indra also becomes a hermit in one of the stories relayed about him in the Brahma Vaivarta Purana. Ganesha is also another god associated with this chakra, and according to the Laya Yoga, Ganesha resides in the first chakra, called the Muladhara, Mala meaning mane and Adhara meaning base or foundation. The seed mantra for this chakra is I am, and within the Bindu dot it is said Brahma resides. Brahma is the god associated with the life force of the divine source. Brahma is also shown with 4 faces, symbolic for the foundation onto which God consciousness is manifest. Brahma's consort is Dakini, and she is said to be very beautiful with 3 eyes and 4 arms, symbolic of the number 7. And she is also symbolic of the creation forces that emanate from the divine and are manifest onto the physical plane. Tibetan Lama Thubten Yeshi explains the forces associated with Dakini as such. When the completion stage practices have been mastered and we have gained control over our subtle energy winds and so forth, there will come a time when the Dakas and Dakinis will come. Physically embracing such a consort is necessary to bring all the pervading energy winds into the central channel, a prerequisite for opening the heart center and experiencing the profoundest level of clear light. In other words, just as when the student is ready, the teacher appears, so it is with Dakini once a soul is at the first gate, ready to ascend and walk the inner path of the initiate, represented by the hermit. Dakini is the energetic force that embraces and guides each soul. However, once again, we see it is an open heart that illuminates the path and guides the soul. And we see this is also relayed in the hermit card with the lantern held at the heart chakra. Kundalini represents the energetic force that lays dormant within this energy center until this connecting conduit of energy between Mother Earth and the ethereal body reawakens when the cycle of higher consciousness returns to us. As mentioned earlier, the sacrum chakra is also connected to the same numbers as the root chakra on the ancient Egyptian number key. In the ancient Hindu texts, this energy center is known as the Swatisthana chakra, which translates to one's own abode. On the symbol for this chakra, there is a lotus with 6 petals and a crescent moon, and just as we see the sun represented behind the moon on the tarot card, we also see this connection in the yellow disc behind the crescent on the symbol for this chakra. The connection to the moon and this chakra is also relayed on the tree of life in the number 9 Sephirot Yesod. This energy point at the sacrum is both connected to the solar plexus navel chakra and the root chakra. The emotional energy flow between the ka of the soul located at the navel and the foundational instinctive attributes of the earth represented in the root chakra are expressed through the sacrum energy center. This is also where the ethereal union of the twin souls and the divine is represented. Within the bindu, or dot, above the mantra is the deity Vishnu. Vishnu is symbolic for Orion and God consciousness. So again, we see a direct connection to the divine in the number 9 Sephirot Yesod. In Sufism, it is said the lower energetic forces within this chakra must be tamed before one can be closer to the divine. The sacrum represents the second gate, and this is where the soul must overcome base sexual desires which control the lower mind and physical body through the sacrum and the carnal earthly forces emanating at the root. John 1:5, and the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. And Colossians 2:23, which things have indeed a shew of wisdom in will worship and humility and neglecting of the body, not in any honour to the satisfying of the flesh. And finally, 1 John 4:4, ye are of God, little children, and have overcome them, because greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. Let us look at the remaining cards within the major arcana to help us better understand the evolution and processes of the twin souls as they ascend back up the 7 gates to reunite with God consciousness and be crowned as an illuminated soul within a new cycle. Let us first start with the number 10 Wheel of Fortune card. This card is symbolic of the destiny and journey of the twin souls. Not only do we see the infinite cycle symbolized by the number 10 when divided by the Trinity, but also the covenant and destiny of each twin soul is represented in the 2 5s within the number 10. There is a wheel with 8 spokes, symbolic of the immortal soul, with each spoke relating to a different point in the cycle and journey of the soul. On the top of the wheel, we see the Sphinx is representing God's presence within the soul and the will of God upon the destiny of the twin souls. The sword the Sphinx holds is symbolic for the word or law of God, and we see this in these verses. Ephesians 6:17, the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, and Hebrews 4:12. For the word of God is quick and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword. The half-dog, half-human creature is symbolic of the Hierophant, and we can see a similar representation of the Hierophant in religious symbolism, and even Anubis, who is present at the weighing of the heart ceremony. The Hierophant is related to the covenant of each soul. This is the pact each soul has made with God, and that each soul must uphold. On the bottom of the card, we see the twin souls represented in both the physical and the ethereal by the beasts with wings, and we see at the top left we have the angel representing the divine forces, and the bird is symbolic of the ethereal. This card is relating to the knowledge and understanding of ourselves that brings us to the path that leads us back to the union with the divine. The next card is number 11, Justice, and we have looked into the relating energy center, the navel and solar plexus, which is the location of our Ka soul, and the point where we access and express our power from. The navel chakra is symbolic for the third gate and shows that it is the right and just soul that moves beyond this gate to the heart. And we see in this verse 2 Chronicles 1:11, and God said to Solomon, because this was in thine heart, and thou hast not asked riches, wealth, or honour, nor the life of thine enemies, neither yet hast asked long life, but hast asked wisdom and knowledge for thyself, that thou mayest judge my people, over whom I have made thee king. So it is the knowledge and wisdom of the soul that illuminates the path of righteousness, and the soul instead only strives for truth, and as such finds thine heart. And in Hebrews 11:33, we see that it is the righteous and faithful that have the inner strength to subdue the beast. And note that within this number of the verse, we have the number 33, which equates to the crown chakra. Who through faith subdued kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions. Our next card is number 12, the Hanged Man. This card represents the soul that is spiritually preparing to begin the ascent back to God consciousness. The number 12 represents the unreunited Trinity on the material plane. The hanging on the cross represents the complete abandonment of all that has held the soul in bondage to the material plane. The hanging man is connected to Jesus on the cross and Odin on the tree. It is the complete surrendering of the soul to the divine within, removing all the mental and spiritual anchors that prevent the soul from ascending the gates. Once the soul has removed these mental and spiritual shackles, the internal path becomes illuminated. The number 13 death card has been covered in depth in previous videos, and as discussed, this is symbolic of the death of the physical container upon reunification with the divine. Number 14 is connected to temperance. Temperance is symbolic for the divine path of the soul and the soul's covenant, as we see 1 and 4 equate to 5. This path is being represented on the card beside the angel and leads into the mountains, where there is a shining crown symbolized. This is showing that if the covenant is upheld, the inner path is revealed and the divinity within the soul will be realized. Divine consciousness is within the ether and is being poured from the top cup to fill the bottom cup on the lower ethereal planes. We can also see the sun represented in the circle with the dot upon the angel's head, and the head is glowing, symbolic of the light of God transmuted through the sun. And the triangle on the angel's heart is representing the Trinity, and this shows if the correct path can be found, then the soul is crowned with Christ consciousness. Number 15 is related to the devil card, and as discussed in depth in previous videos, is symbolic for the physical bondage of the soul that remains in ignorance, controlled by the base energies of the material plane. The number 16 tower card is related to the ethereal, as 1 and 6 equate to 7. This is a highly emotive card and looks very connected to the physical, and in some ways it is, for it is showing that it is the shaking of our physical foundations that cause the soul to discover inner strength. Again, we see this also relayed with Daniel and the lions, where in the darkest hours of despair, Daniel learns the truth of himself and therefore discovers his immortality. The male and female twin souls are shown falling from the tower. On the male side, there are 12 golden leaves, and on the female side, she has 10. The 12 is symbolic for the unreunited twin souls on the material plane, and the number 10 shows the covenants of the twin soul and the infinite cycle of its evolution. This card is symbolic for the destined events that the soul cannot avoid, shown by the lightning bolt from above. And it is these events of pain and disruption that the opportunity of spiritual growth and inner strength can be found. Card number 17 is the star, and we have discussed this card in detail within previous videos also. The star is symbolic of the soul's potential illumination at the time of the cycle when the light of the Creator, symbolized by the eight-pointed star, returns to us. Number 18 is the moon card. Again, we have discussed this card in detail in previous videos. The moon represents the ethereal plane and energies that govern the emotions of the soul. Card number 19 is the sun and represents the physical plane, but also the potential of God manifest through the soul onto the material plane. The child wears 7 flowers upon the head representing the ethereal self. There is also a red feather upon the head, symbolizing Orion and the Christ light being transmuted through the sun and illuminating and purifying the soul, symbolized by the child on the white horse. The red cloth is representing the divinity within the soul, and the 4 sunflowers represent earth and foundation. Number 20 is the judgment card. This is the equivalent of the weighing of the heart ceremony, when the light of the Creator returns to fully illuminate each soul. The number 20 is also connected to the heart on the ancient Egyptian number key. So again, we see that it is through the heart, full of light, that we are granted access through the 6th gate to reunite with the divine. On the card, we see that the souls are represented in a grey-bluish colour, representing their physical containers. As we saw with the death card, when we are manifest in the physical form on the material plane, we are essentially in death. And this is what is represented in the judgment card and why the souls are shown in coffins. We can also see across the water that the ethereal plane is represented, and there are also souls that wait in judgment, and this is because the light of the Creator illuminates both the physical and ethereal planes. And those souls who have passed over into the ethereal are also weighed. Psalms 107:20. He sends his word and heals them and delivers them from their graves. John 5:28. Marvel not at this, for the hour is coming, in which all that are in the graves shall hear his voice. The trumpet is symbolic of the divine resonance that awakens the souls and brings with it healing and protection, symbolized by the flag with the Red Cross. We see again a connection to the Freemasons and the Red Cross, as they have within their organisation the Order of the Red Cross. Lastly, we have number 21, the World card, and we see in the number 21, it is representing the Trinity that have reunited and now separated once again at the beginning of a cycle at the height of consciousness. The World card is symbolic of what all souls in higher consciousness have in their power. The female is represented in the middle with the two scrolls representing the Word of God and the complete divine knowledge they now have access to. She is also symbolic of the female creation forces that birth the souls onto the material plane. Around her is a wreath representing the full cycle being completed, and the soul has now been rewarded with knowledge and the full understanding of their divinity. On the top and bottom of the wreath, we see that the infinity symbol is being represented. Therefore, we have a connection to the number 88, and the male and female twin souls depicted here also. Around the outside of the wreath, we see a man and three animals. The man represents the male twin soul birthed through into the new cycle with the female creational forces. The eagle is symbolic of the ethereal energies and the ether, while the lion is symbolic of inner strength and courage. The bull is referring to inner wisdom. Both animals are also representing the physical attributes of the soul. So now, thanks to the ancient Egyptian number key and the other keys hidden as symbols within the tarot cards, we have revealed the story of ourselves, the story that has been stolen and coveted by religious institutions and secret organizations. However, we have only just scratched the surface of this truth of who we are. And that truth is, we are much more than just our physical containers, but are powerful beyond our imaginings, each soul with part of the divine within us. And it is this divine spark within us that is illuminated when the light of Orion and Christ consciousness returns at the end of the cycle. And it is then that our hearts are weighed and the worthiness of the soul is measured. Each of us has traversed this journey over the eons to get to the moment in time we now stand. Unfortunately, this truth of our divinity was taken from us with violence and torture and hoarded in the strongholds of the Antichrist establishment, otherwise known as the Vatican. But don't be naive in thinking this information would also not be known by the Freemasons and the elite families and royalty. They took this knowledge for themselves and sold us a lie of death and hell. The Crusades were nothing more than an excuse to pillage and plunder all civilizations of this knowledge, so it could be kept for themselves at the expense of the masses, who they enslaved into bondage to serve only them. They murdered almost 1 million Cathars and stole all their scriptures and most sacred holy texts. They called them heretics and sentenced them to the most painful deaths. Now all we have left are remnants of these ancient texts that survived destruction. The rest was stolen by the Antichrist Catholics to be put together in a twisted version of scripture, which they then used to lull the herd into a false belief of themselves and the reality in which they exist. Their agenda is to keep us in bondage to the physical plane, so we cannot move into our ethereal body, and they do this by giving us a perception of limit and lack about ourselves. We are told that we are beings that are finite and that we will die, and we either go to heaven if we are on our knees to them, or we go to hell to burn in eternity. However, worse still, some have now gone down the even more foolish path of thinking there is no higher God consciousness and they are not accountable for anything they do. The truth is, we are all immortal, but as with everything, it comes at a price. We must be worthy of that immortality. And we have accountability for our gift of life, as that is how the universe sees our expression of soul. The truth is, we really do need to be a good soul and have lived an honest life with good intent towards all fellow man and creatures. Then your immortality will be assured. For those that view this as acts of a vengeful God do not understand the laws of nature. Because for nature to continue to expand and thrive in perfection, only the best will ever remain in existence. It is just the law of the universe and nothing personal, and we see it play out around us in the physical environment every day in nature. This is also the same for souls and our consciousness. We have to understand that everything always plays out on multiple levels, and our souls are subject to the same laws as all existence. In Hermetics, these different levels are described as the three great planes. They are the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. They are not so much even to be seen as distinctly separate either. They more or less merge into each other, but it is basically helpful to view reality as being layered and always playing out on these different levels in the macrocosm and in the microcosm. But this understanding of accountability is nothing new. For we see this also in the ancient Egyptian weighing of the heart ceremony, where the heart is weighed against the feather of truth. The feather actually represents Orion and the godlight that illuminates the hearts of men. It is no coincidence that we hear this judgment theme repeated across culture. This is because indeed we experience a cosmic event in which our reality is shifted and we are judged. Once a soul is judged worthy of being bestowed with highest consciousness, they are rewarded with immortality on a newly rebirthed earth at the height of consciousness to complete this infinite cycle of the soul once again. This is why all these great civilizations, such as ancient Egypt, Sumeria, Angkor Wat, ancient Greece, the Aztecs and Mayans, all sprung up from nowhere. And for those that think such a shift in reality would not be possible, even your own scientists have discovered this truth in quantum physics, though Hermetics knew of this law thousands of years ago, and it is called the law of vibration and is one of the 7 Hermetic principles of the universe. Charles Darwin's theory of evolution is incorrect. We live in cycles within cycles and all exist in rhythms of higher and lower, in and out, just like the tide. So we can understand this also happens within the consciousness of the collective souls. We can also see this explained in the Hermetic principle of rhythm. This cycle happens infinitely. There is no starting point that we expand only forward from, as in Darwin's theory. Each and every soul exists at 0 point, with the universe extending out from them in both the macrocosm and the microcosm. What Darwin's theory actually did was keep us bound to the physical plane once again. And once again, this is due to an agenda they have to keep us seeing reality in a certain perspective. However, this is part of a cycle we go through in our descent of consciousness. We begin the cycle in Zep Tepi, as the ancient Egyptians called it, which translates to first time, at the height of consciousness, as all the great civilizations around our planet did, only to descend once again into a time when humanity forgets its divinity and becomes broken and corrupt, full of empty souls who have forgotten who they are. This is the time we now live in, but soon we are about to begin that new cycle once again. The Maya actually were right, but just got the timing a bit off. But that is to be expected when you are orally handing down information over thousands and thousands of years. But the Maya knew it was about the sun changing, and the Hopi mythology also says this. And we must also remember when we are so focused on times and dates that the Maya and scripture say the exact time will not be known. Even so, the new energies are streaming in, and all but the unconscious can feel them. And know they are intensifying. Mother Earth is also reacting to this new energy. Her grids are firing up again as she adjusts and readies herself. She is also giving us clear messages to pay attention to our surroundings and our environment. We can only trust our instincts in these times. This new cycle began last year on the transit of Venus. We even saw the Queen take full advantage of this new energy, holding her 60th Jubilee right on the beginning of the transit. During that transit, Venus gave birth to a new cycle on the sun, And it is important to note that Venus is also the timekeeper for the Maya, and they watch the movement of Venus intently. So this last transit of a 26,000-year precessional cycle is very important. If we look to mythology, we can equate this event to Isis giving birth to Horus, or the Virgin Mary giving birth to Jesus. The new sun Horus was birthed on the Venus transit last year, and so began a battle between Horus, the new cycle on the sun, and the old and corrupted sun Seth, that oversaw a corrupted and broken civilization, as told in the ancient Egyptian mythology. And the ancient Egyptian mythology tells of the battle ending with Osiris rewarding Horus as the victor. This is symbolic of the new light of Orion being transmuted through the new young sun Horus, also symbolic of baby Jesus. However, we have to understand that Jesus and Christ have multiple layers symbolically, and it is the Christ light that returns to the divine male twin soul that gives the name Jesus and Christ a connection with the Son. This is why we see such reverence for the Son of God, because it is the Christ light that illuminates within the divine male, who is the Ark of the Covenant. The Lamb of God is God returning a part of himself to the divine male soul. The divine female twin soul is the embodiment of the moon, and she is more connected to the ethereal. She is represented by Isis, but Isis also has aspects of Venus, especially when Horus is connected with her. The divine female soul is the Holy Grail, and she receives her knowledge directly from God. The scriptures and mythology are all telling the same story, and that is that it is both the divine male and female twin souls that must bring forth divine knowledge together. This is because this knowledge originates in the ethereal realm of the divine, and as such, males and females are equal in both skills and intellect. So it is clear now why we are seeing biblical events unfolding around the planet and intense cosmic and celestial changes upon us. That light from Orion is returning to illuminate us once again, so we can once again access divine knowledge in a time of higher consciousness. We see this returning consciousness also present in the awakening we are experiencing as a collective. Even though the numbers are not large, there is a definite expansion happening nevertheless. Each soul is remembering their divinity by order of their birthing onto the physical plane. This, as with everything in the universe, is done following the Fibonacci sequence. The first souls that are birthed through are called divine, as they hold the strongest memory of their divinity and the divine knowledge within them. But with each subsequent soul that births through, this memory is diluted to finally, when we have an imbalance of souls populating this planet, we get the majority with very little memory of who they really are. With this expansion of consciousness returning, what we are seeing in fact is us remembering the truth of our divinity that was once lost to us. What has been hidden about our true divinity, and what information can be revealed amongst all the symbolism in religious art, alchemical and hermetic drawings, and even authentic crop circles. What they are hiding from us is that we are birthed as souls that split into male and female upon manifestation from God's consciousness onto the material realm. We are all immortal twin souls that were birthed onto this physical realm from the consciousness of our God located in the Orion Nebula. Our God consciousness is known by many names: Osiris, Odin, Vishnu, God, and more. But every ancient civilization around the world knew the importance of the Orion Nebula and our God, for he shapes our reality. This is where a solid understanding of hermetics is required if you are to fully fathom this information. If we go back to where I mentioned reality shifting and quantum physics, confirming this could indeed be a possibility, as we are all just particles created from waveforms. This is where we need to have an understanding for the law of the mental universe, for it is then we understand that reality is made up of particles all held together in waveforms due to the thought projection of the mental universe. The best way to visualize this is how we see sand particles move into different geometric shapes on a board depending on what resonance is used, as in cymatics. When this understanding is applied to the hermetic law of the mental universe, we understand that the mental projection is resonance and light projected in waveform from the galactic core through the mind's eye of Orion, and finally brings us into existence on the material realm through the transmutation of energy of the sun and the moon. The sun is the projection of God consciousness, and the moon is the birther of souls, and the souls are birthed through the navel energy center. Edgar Cayce also confirms this and calls this energy center the Leiden. But it is not only the Orion Nebula that is a consciousness in our galaxy. Each of the other nebula are also a consciousness, and each manifesting a reality and souls onto a realm otherwise known as a planet. In our mental universe, using the energies of the sun and the moon, as well as the influences of the other planets, we are manifested onto the physical plane. But due to the earth always being in shadow half the time, there is another plane that exists on this realm, and that is the ethereal plane. Throughout this cycle as souls, we move between both planes, manifest in the physical form, and when we die a physical death, our soul moves into the ethereal plane to be rebirthed once again in the physical. However, in our truest form, we are ethereal, and we manifest into different containers, so to speak. This cycle of reincarnation happens over a 26,000 year cycle, until we're at the end of the cycle and the galactic core Atum once again gives us a pulse of illumination. Atum is infinite God energy with no consciousness. This is what all the nebula within the galaxy access to create souls and our reality, and this is where souls are returned if they do not pass judgment.
In using the divination arts, that's how we clean our vision, become hygienic, find the way back, so to speak, using those very arts, Kabbalah, Tarot, astrology, numerology. Those are the four windows to the soul. So in one sense, we can look at it that way. I think that Kabbalah is good. I use it because even though it's contaminated, as I said, by some of this higher, lower stuff, it has some other, teachings, other principles that are really, really profound. And one of them is that the Kabbalah is all about mirrors, right? You have these 10 sephirah. It's like our word for sphere. The sephirah, these sort of realms. These are just stages of mentality. As we get higher on the tree, we have a more clear vision. And when we get lower down on the tree, then things get complicated. The soul gets more entangled and so on. But each of these zones, in a way, is like a mirror. In fact, some Kabbalistic schools actually show a lightning flash bouncing off the 10 mirrors. Some people have also described that fall of light or descent of energy in musical terms, that it's like a great sound, a great symphonic, note, a chord, a song that was, when it's with God, it's in its purest form, and then it gets more discordant and chaotic. So there's so much. Originally, Kabbalah was a tree, because the Jewish Kabbalah comes actually from the ancient Arya. And in those days, it was actually always shown as a tree with its roots in the ground and branches in the heavens. That same thing you see when you look at the Norse sagas, again, the high Arya, show it as a tree. But what I was going to say is that the mirror-like quality is very, very valuable, because you and I made that little quote that I always use, which is that in the lower or in the smaller is the higher. In the minute and in the lesser, is always contained the greater. And this also then pertains to the Kabbalah and its system. What I mean specifically by that is that in the lower sephirah, these are called the little face that reflects the higher face. So in other words, at the lowest part of the Kabbalah, the highest sephirah, the highest truth is in some way enfolded. And one would say that holds vice versa, that of course in the unity of God, everything in creation, everything that we call reality was enfolded. But the same thing is the other way, that we're never lost. We're never completely abandoned, because even at the lowest aspect of life, in the deepest gutter, in the deepest troughs of life, and one can speak about that psychologically or spiritually, whatever way you want to put it. But in that darkness, so to speak, spiritual darkness, there is always light, always just enough to take us back to the right road, should we have, again, the way of seeing. This is the key thing. The way of thinking, the way of understanding, you see. So this is turns out to be a beautiful metaphor then of the so-called fall that Roshin's talking about. On another level, the Kabbalah is saying there's various ways of getting back. There's the straight way of the mystic. There's the winding way back up the tree of the magician. And I think what they're doing there is trying to account for the two kinds of personality that there are. There's those who are the ascetic type, who just sits, meditates, abandons the world, abandons all of its entrapments, and tries to go back in that more traditional mystical way. And then there may be a person who says, no, we have to go through every aspect of reality. This is the veil of error, and we're not meant to avoid those errors. We're actually in this plane so that we can learn by our errors. And that means revisiting every step of the way, every reality, every obstacle, do it the grindingly slow way, step by step up the great staircase back to, unity, to the top of the tree, to the top of the pyramid of enlightenment. So this accounts, some people call it the path of the arrow being the straight way, the path of the serpent being the slower way. Ultimately, the Kabbalists say you reach the end anyway. So it really doesn't matter which way you go. And so there's certain truth to that. There's definitely certain truth to that. There are these two different kinds of person where it's almost like the fool who persists in his folly becomes wise, as William Blake said, that you have to go through all the trials and tribulations of earth, marriages and births and jobs and connections and fallings outs and wars and slaughters and mayhem and all the attainment artistically and professionally, all of the different modes of life that exist. This is part of learning through experience where the human errors are, and then by a very slow, gradual, meticulous process, excising them from consciousness, excising them from our being, as opposed to the sort of jumping out of the body and negating and then just trying to ascend. There's these two different ways, you see.